Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia is leading the charge on that War Powers Resolution, and he joins us now. He is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations and the Armed Services Committees.
Welcome, Senators. Good to have you with us. Look, you know, Donald Trump is going to stand up in front of a bank of microphones and try to politically shame Republicans and call them out and call them names. But what you've done is gotten to the heart of the relationship between Congress and the presidency, and the ability of a president, any president, to take the kind of actions this president has taken. Talk a little bit about the impact that this could have, and help people understand and contextualize, you know, how War Powers Resolutions going back a number of years now. This isn't the first time this has been an action of the Senate. What does it mean at this moment? And what are you trying to assert here relative to congressional, senatorial, you know, sort of relationship with the executive branch, but also, you know, the idea that you are a co-equal branch of government?
Well, Michael, thanks, and to Symone and Alicia, I really appreciate being on. This thing is really simple. Somebody came up to me at Mass on Christmas Eve who's got a kid in the Army Rangers and said, don't let him send my kid into war without a debate or vote in Congress. And that's what this is about. The framers of our Constitution made the judgment that it was pretty unusual at the time that war should not be declared by the president on his or her own. Even George Washington, who was president at the time, they just decided it was too big a decision for one person. And so they said initiation of war is for Congress, and then once initiated, the president is the sole commander-in-chief. President Trump wants to make Congress irrelevant on spending decisions, on nominations, on a whole series of things, but especially he wants to make us irrelevant about the use of our sons and daughters in war. And he wants to be able to use them as a palace guard and have them do military actions against Iran or Nigeria or Venezuela, or I guess coming up, Cuba or Greenland or Colombia or Mexico. But that's not what the Constitution says. And the American public deserve to see the Senate and the House debate this in public before we commit our sons and daughters into military action. That's all I'm trying to do. And the Republicans who voted with my amendment last week are just standing up for the basic proposition that our sons and daughters shouldn't go into war on a presidential say-so.
Well, you know, Senator, along those lines, your resolution, I just want to note for people, is different than the 1973 War Powers Resolution, which is a statutory law that speaks about Congress's authority here. Your resolution is very specific to Venezuela. And you just mentioned many of the other places that the president has telegraphed, I'm just going to say, his strategy on what he would like to do next. This resolution, though, doesn't cover those other places. So depending on what happens here, will we see other resolutions, or do you think you should amend this resolution given what the president is telling us right now?
Symone, here's my thought. You will see other resolutions. I don't think we'll amend this one, because if you try to amend it to include other countries, you might put some senators in a funny position where they don't think the president has legal authority to go to war against country X, but for some reason they maybe do think there's authority for country Y, and so then you're putting them in a weird position. How do they vote? I think the right strategy here is to have this debate on Venezuela, and we'll likely have it tomorrow and Thursday. The Senate will then complete this debate. My hope is the Republicans will stick with where they were last week. We will say to the president, no war without the Congress. But then you will see resolutions filed to make sure we don't go to war with Cuba, Greenland, Denmark, Iran, Nigeria, Colombia, Mexico. You will see those filed in coming weeks for certain.
Senator, this vote comes on the heels of new reporting from the New York Times that the United States attacked one of those boats off the coast of Venezuela with an aircraft that looked like a civilian plane. We were talking yesterday about the war crime that is perfidy. I was doing a little bit more research on it today. When those laws are violated, legal responsibility ordinarily falls to the person who ordered the perfidious act. In this case, do you understand who that is? Is that Secretary Hegseth? Is that the President of the United States? And what then does accountability look like?
You've asked me a very important question. Because the administration has thus far only been willing to have hearings about this in classified. I mean, get this, not a single public hearing yet about any of this. Everything I know is classified. So it's hard for me to completely answer the question, but let me do my best. The news that the first strike that was taken on September 2nd involved struggling shipwrecked survivors who were then struck again 45 minutes later raises huge questions about the legality not only of the initial strike, but clear violations of basic laws of war that say you don't strike shipwrecked sailors. And remember, these individuals who were clinging to flotsam and jetsam in the ocean after the strike, they weren't even aware that the U.S. had put them on a target list because the president had declared them combatants in a secret order that he had not yet revealed even to Congress, much less to them. So they were clinging to shipwrecked material without realizing that the U.S. had put them on a kill list. And then they saw a craft overhead and waved to it without realizing they were on a kill list, and then they got killed. The New York Times reporting this morning takes it even a step farther by reporting that the craft that struck them was painted to look like a civilian aircraft, not a military aircraft. I can't go further than what the public reporting is, but if these allegations were true, that they were struck when they were struggling and shipwrecked, and they were struck by a craft that was painted to look like a civilian craft, it would definitely implicate the laws of war, as I believe this entire military operation implicates the laws of war because it's without a congressional authorization. Who gave the order? I know that, but I know it in a classified setting, and I can't reveal it. But I do know this, within the Pentagon and within our allies, there has already been grave concern about the legality of these operations, far beyond the concern that members of Congress has. And this will eventually come out. The American public will see that strike. I've seen it, and I think when the public sees it, the public will be shocked.
Senator, real quick, we have less than a minute left. You spoke with Republicans today who are on this bill with you. Will they stay? Will they stay with you?
My hope is, Michael, that they will. Look, the Republicans who voted for me, they tend to, when they make up their mind, they tend to stick. And again, they're not voting to rebuke the president. They're just voting to exercise power that the Senate must exercise. This isn't just about a Maduro arrest. We are now in Venezuela telling them who their government should be, telling them when they will be allowed to have elections, seizing all their oil and deciding how it should be spent. That is not a mission our military should undertake, the repeated seizure of oil without a congressional authorization.
Senator Tim Kaine, we're going to all be watching that vote tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and stay with us.